The soft chime of the doorbell echoed through the grand, glistening jewelry store as Eleanor Evans stepped inside. She clutched her modest coat tightly around her frail shoulders, her silver hair tucked neatly beneath a simple wool hat. The dazzling display of diamonds and gold shimmered beneath the showroom lights, yet no one paid her any mind. The store was bustling with well-dressed patrons, their conversations a low murmur beneath the classical music playing in the background. Eleanor had built this store from the ground up with her late husband, Thomas, nearly 50 years ago. Though she had stepped away from the daily operations in recent years, she still owned every inch of it. However, she found joy in visiting unannounced, watching from the shadows as customers found treasures and employees upheld the values she had instilled: respect, kindness, and integrity. But today, something was amiss. She approached a display case lined with elegant pearl necklaces, her fingers lightly tracing the glass as memories washed over her. It was then that a voice, sharp and dismissive, cut through her reverie. "Excuse me, ma'am, but this isn't a thrift store," the salesman sneered, stepping in front of her view. He was young, dressed sharply in a navy blue suit, his name tag reading, Brandon. His lips curled into a smirk as he took in her simple attire. "If you're looking for costume jewelry, there's a discount shop down the block." Eleanor blinked, stunned. It had been years since anyone had spoken to her with such blatant condescension. She straightened her posture, her steel blue eyes narrowing. "I'm just looking," she replied evenly. Brandon sighed dramatically, stepping aside but not without muttering, "Waste of time." Her heart ached at his words, not for herself, but for what this behavior meant. Had her store lost its values? She wandered toward another section, listening as Brandon enthusiastically attended to a younger couple, his tone dripping with charm and eagerness. "This piece is exquisite," he said, holding up a delicate sapphire ring. "Handcrafted. Only for those with refined taste." Eleanor watched as he continued his performance, warmth in his voice only when he deemed a customer worthy. Her chest tightened. This was not what she and Thomas had envisioned. A moment later, an elderly man entered, leaning heavily on a cane. His clothes were a bit worn, but his eyes shone with kindness. He approached the counter hesitantly, looking at a simple gold band. "Excuse me, sir," he said softly to Brandon. "Could I see that ring?" Brandon barely concealed his disdain. "That one is quite expensive," he said. "Are you sure you want to see it?" Eleanor felt her heart clench. The man hesitated, then nodded. "It's for my wife," he murmured. "Our anniversary. I've been saving up for months." Brandon forced a tight smile but made no effort to retrieve the ring. "We have more affordable options in the back," he said. Before Eleanor could stop herself, she stepped forward. "That won't be necessary," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. Brandon turned, his expression flickering between annoyance and confusion. "Excuse me?" Eleanor smiled at the elderly man. "Would you allow me to show you something special?" She walked behind the counter with confidence, her hands reaching for a small, velvet box beneath the glass. Inside lay a stunning gold band, simple yet timeless. "This ring was part of our very first collection," she said softly, placing it in the older man's palm. "My husband designed it himself. It symbolizes unwavering love." The man's hands trembled as he gazed at the ring. "It's perfect," he whispered. Brandon scoffed. "Ma'am, you can't just hand out expensive pieces." Eleanor turned to him then, a quiet authority in her stance. "Brandon, is it?" she asked. He nodded, clearly irritated. "I built this store with my husband, and I have watched over it for decades," she said firmly. "And in all those years, I have never tolerated disrespect. Not to our customers. Not to our employees. Not to anyone." The color drained from Brandon's face. "You own this store?" Eleanor nodded. "And you," she continued, "have forgotten the very values we built it upon. This store is not just about selling luxury. It's about celebrating love, commitment, and kindness. It's about treating every person who walks through that door with dignity. Silence stretched between them as other employees stopped to listen, their eyes wide with recognition. Eleanor turned back to the elderly man. "How much have you saved?" she asked gently. He hesitated. $200, he admitted, his eyes filled with both hope and shame. Eleanor closed the box and placed it in his hands. "Then that is exactly what this ring costs today," she said with a warm smile. Tears welled in the man's eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." Eleanor patted his hand. "Just give it to your wife, and love her well." As the man left, Brandon stood frozen, his arrogance shattered. "You have a choice," Eleanor told him. "You can learn from this, change, and become the kind of man who deserves to work here. Or you can leave now." Brandon swallowed hard. I'd like to stay. And do better." Eleanor nodded. "Then start by helping the next customer with kindness." And with that, she turned, walking toward the door, her heart full. She knew that today, kindness had won. Here's your inspiring and heartfelt story. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments or additions.